everyone. Good evening. I'm Shreya Dhondial. It's good to see you. The first 2 cases of Omicron in India have now been confirmed by the government of India. One is a 66-year-old foreigner with a travel history from South Africa. Even before it could be determined that he was carrying the Omicron variant, he has left the country after testing negative. The second is a 46-year-old healthcare worker who is completely unrelated to the first case. Both cases have come from Karnataka, and needless to say, this is just the beginning. But the beginning of what is the question? So far, the symptoms caused by Omicron are milder compared to the deadly Delta variant. But there is a caveat that doctors in South Africa are flagging. Leading South African scientists have warned that it is too early to say that the Omicron variant will only cause mild illness. So far, it has mostly affected young people who are better able to fight off the pathogen, and people tend to get sicker after carrying the virus for some time. But there is some evidence to suggest that the new mutant is more infectious, that it spreads very fast. In 3 weeks, it has already spread to 30 countries. South Africa has doubled its cases from 4,000 plus to 8,000 plus in the last 24 hours, and Omicron is by far the most dominant strain in the country. In fact, 75% cases are Omicron variants. Almost all health experts are saying that vaccines and masks are still the best bet. In the 2 cases detected in India, and both have seen mild illnesses, thankfully, both were vaccinated, one fully and one partially. First, listening to the government of India confirming the first 2 Omicron cases in India.
We need not panic, but awareness is absolutely essential. COVID-appropriate behavior is required, use of masks, and not organizing mass gatherings will help breaking the chain of transmission of Omicron.
Now, it's been just over a week since the Omicron variant was first reported in South Africa. Now, healthcare workers in the country are racing to learn more about it. CNN's David McKenzie visited a lab in Johannesburg that is studying this new variant. Take a look.
After tracking COVID for many months at this lab, Janine du Plessis is bracing herself.
Have you seen a lot more positive cases in the last few weeks?
Yes, we have.
First a trickle, then a flood. At the Wits Vida lab, they're studying a disturbing variant of an old foe.
It's still too early to actually tell. There's so much that is so unknown about the variant. Everyone feels a little bit of hopelessness in a moment like that.
This lab is really at the coalface of the COVID response. You know, they're expanding so fast, they're putting their samples in freezers right here in the hallway. They come in shifts, and as this wave develops, they'll be operating 24 hours a day.
They know how bad it gets. This was Delta's awful impact in Johannesburg. In July, patients stacked in hallways, struggling to breathe, in exclusive footage obtained by CNN. At the Wits Vida lab and all across the globe, they're trying to understand whether Omicron is more transmissible, deadlier, whether it breaks through existing COVID-19 vaccines.
What does it feel like that the entire world is hanging on this discovery that was figured out here initially?
Yeah, so I mean, it does feel a bit sort of surreal when you watch the news and you see the impact it's having globally, and you're thinking, wow, you know, it's sort of affecting stock markets and and airlines and people's travel plans. You know, you kind of don't plan on having that sort of ripple effect.
A spike in cases first happened in Pretoria, with a cluster infection at this technical university. But hints of a new variant were first detected by scientists and pathologists at Lancet Laboratories. In early November, they spotted a strange anomaly in their positive PCR tests. Then it happened over and over again. It reminded them of tests for the Alpha variant, first detected more than a year ago in the UK.
What was it like to see this anomaly cropping up again?
Well, it was a bit disturbing because it made us worry that we were dealing with something new. And because it coincided with an increase in positivity rates, it made us worried that we could be dealing with a new variant.
Lancet urgently notified South Africa's genomics team. Within days, they described and made public disturbing details of the highly mutated virus. Much of the world shut off travel from southern Africa. And scientists here say they are now struggling to fly in critical reagent for their lab work to understand Omicron.
Was that it's so important to alert everybody about this?
Especially with the reaction of the world to Southern Africa on the announcement of the variant. So, a lot of people say, well, why don't you just keep quiet about what you find? But what's important is we know that a new variant is likely to cause an increase in cases, whether they be more severe or not.
So for the moment, the Omicron variant has spread to 30 nations and counting. Will a travel ban stop it? Not really. What can water down its impact, say doctors, is vaccines. In fact, around the world, voices are growing stronger for booster doses. In India, the moral dilemma is this. Should you fully vaccinate every adult first or give boosters to healthcare workers and the vulnerable population who had gotten their second shot some 6 months ago and therefore their immunity is slowly coming down? Karnataka says the time for booster doses has come, at least for frontline workers. In the war against a Hydra-like virus with multiple heads cropping up in the form of variants, do your antibodies need a boost? The US president certainly thinks so.
Do not wait. Go get your booster.
The vaccine makers believe it too.
In both cases, boosters should reduce dramatically the gap.
And now even the world's foremost health expert has given the nod.
Should I wait to get that boost? And the answer is no. If you are eligible, namely if you've had the Moderna or the Pfizer and you're 6 months following your primary regimen of vaccination or you're 2 months following J&J, don't wait. Get that extra boost now.
With Omicron now in India, the focus is back on the booster debate. The Serum Institute of India, which produces the vaccine given to 90% of all Indians, has already sought approval for Covishield as a booster dose, citing adequate stock availability in the country. States are asking for it. Karnataka's chief minister was in the national capital to meet the health minister.
इसके ऊपर हम एक्सपर्ट्स से चर्चा करेंगे और एक नतीजे पे आएंगे और आपको भी बताएंगे और we'll give the new guidelines for the states also.
The opposition has asked the government questions in parliament.
बहुत से हमारे वृद्ध, हमारे दादा दादी, नाना नानी हैं जिन्होंने 2 डोज ले लिए हैं, पर उनको और हम अधिक संरक्षण देना चाहते हैं, उसको हम बूस्टर डोज देना चाहते हैं. कहाँ है आपकी बूस्टर डोज पे पॉलिसी?
But experts in India believe that the booster dose isn't the solution for all our concerns, given that more than half the country is still to be vaccinated.
What we should be really debating is, have we vaccinated enough number of people? There is a huge number of people who had 1 dose of vaccine. They haven't taken the second dose. So everyone who had the first dose should run and get their vaccine. And then at some point of time, when that is covered, government will be very comfortable in opening it up for the booster dose.
Which is why India's policy as of now remains wait and watch. To boost or not to boost. The government continues to deliberate, but the fear remains that Omicron won't leave us with much of a choice. With Ritanshu Bhattacharya, in New Delhi, I'm Shreya Dhondial. My guest this evening is joining me from Bangalore. Dr. Ravindra Mehta is the Chief of Critical Care Pulmonology at the Apollo Hospital in Bangalore. Doctor, good to see you first of all after a long time. We are talking about COVID after a long time. But Dr. Mehta, here's the question. For the last 72 hours, we have been talking about how the Omicron variant is causing only mild illness. But the fact is that today South African scientists have told their lawmakers it is too early to come to that conclusion. Right now, only younger people have fallen ill. We do not know how the variant behaves in older people. In any case, people carry the variant for a while before falling sick and sicker. So is it too early to start confidently saying ये तो बहुत mild है, कुछ नहीं होगा?
Yeah, absolutely right. I think the whole question is coming down is looking at the response of the world to what is a known problem. Initially, when COVID came in 1.5 years ago, we basically denied a lot of things. I mean, to do what we do at that time was very difficult. Now, since we've gone through two waves and we've seen bad effects, the world is jumping the gun. Now, the question is, do we have data? Do we have science? Or are we just using past experience? The data will never come, Shreya. The data will take time to come. The good part is it's moving faster than it ever moved before. So in the next 3 to 4 weeks, you will know what is the extent of illness. You will know what is the affliction of the population. You will know what happens to them. You'll know how many reach your ICUs. You'll know how good your vaccine is. You'll know how good your treatment is. Don't forget, we have to treat people also. Till then, it's all speculation. Initially, we pushed the panic button. Now we're saying it's mild. Too soon, too fast. Use mature thinking, use
Correct.
past experience, watch the space, but you cannot take any firm conclusions at this point. I'm sure you and I are going to talk about this every 5 days to see what's going on.
So, very quickly then, most experts, doctors are saying that, well, there may be some question mark about how effective vaccines are against the new variant, given the fact, Dr. Mehta, that if you look at India's own experience, the one foreigner who had come in, the first one to be detected, 66-year-old, he was double vaccinated. The healthcare worker who was detected in Karnataka with the Omicron variant, he had had a single shot. So there was some degree of protection from the vaccine, yet they were carrying the Omicron variant. So while that debate remains, are kids and not vaccinating kids going to be the weak link? Because 67% Indians are already, adult Indians are already, they have some sort of antibodies according to the Sero survey. Bachon ka kya hoga? We are talking at a time when, most states were thinking of opening up schools. There are some kids who are already going to schools.
See, don't forget, for kids, we're still depending on two things. One is the fact that our Sero surveillance showed that 85 to 90% of kids were impacted in the second wave. So we're talking that. And secondly, we're talking that their immune system has a general resistance to COVID-19 in general, irrespective of the variant. So for kids, I don't think we're ever going to get to any vaccination target with respect to the variant. It's going to be the fact that is there immune escape? A word which means that is there immunity good enough to fight this variant? That is the question now. In the timelines which Omicron is going to hit us, we are never going to get vaccinated. So by and large, we'll have to look at the fact that they've still been good against 4 to 5 generations of variants. Is the science telling us this variant will still be okay when it comes to their immune system? And that is the only reserve we have at this point. That's the true fact on the ground.
Dr. Mehta, my last question to you. 49% Indians are fully vaccinated right now. Is it time for booster doses? Do healthcare workers like you, do doctors like you who got your second shot, I think 6 to 7 months ago, do you feel it's time for all of you to get the booster shot?
Okay, so if you give me a minute or two, which you've always given me, we dialed the clock back 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, there's papers showing out there that for the Delta variant, the effectiveness of Covishield falls to less than 10% after 6 months. So that made us build up the science for the booster in addition to the worldwide push in UK, US, Israel, and so on. However, now the whole playing field is redefined. We have Omicron in the picture. Until 3 to 4 weeks pass by, the vaccine guys cannot tell us whether this vaccine works. So now we're struggling with the fact that this booster will only prevent against prior villains up to Delta, but may not do anything for Omicron. So today we have to think again. We have no idea at all. If you give this booster, you have a chance of getting protected, which is what we hope and believe. But we cannot categorically make it a recommendation based on science at this point.
Very quickly then, are you looking at Omicron, given that for the moment everyone is saying it is milder than Delta and less deadlier than Delta, are you seeing this as a blessing in disguise? Because some doctors have been trying to find a silver lining. We have not seen many silver linings in the last 2 years, but is this one?
Omicron is an inevitable part of variants which are going to come. 1. 2, the only fair game has been that people are pushing themselves to get the act into shape and getting the second dose vaccination. Whether that is an impetus for a booster is a totally different issue. But at least people are now going back into responsibility, into understanding that the game is not over. And for God's sake, this country will get double dose vaccinated. And 4 weeks from now, if our vaccine guys show that we have resistance against Omicron, we have had the the best push to vaccination that we could ever have in the last few months.
All right. Doctor, thank you very much for joining us. Dr. Mehta there telling us, putting things in perspective for us. Essentially, it has just been 3 weeks. Let us not jump to conclusions. Let us not start saying that, the only sort of illness that Omicron causes is mild, because we still don't know. And scientists in South Africa are saying it's way too early to tell. So if you are 60 and above, if you are immunocompromised, don't travel, stay at home, get vaccinated, and just keep your masks on. Now, how is Omicron different from other variants? We know that it has the maximum mutations, 50 of them, 36 in the spike protein itself. But what difference does that make? Dr. Sanjay Gupta is explaining how Omicron compares to other variants that we have seen so far.
Thousands of coronavirus variants have emerged since the beginning of the pandemic. Viruses like COVID-19 change or mutate constantly, and once they enter the body, they replicate and evolve. But here's the thing, only a small handful change the virus in a way that can impact us adversely. Here are 4 that the CDC have at one point described as variants of concern. Omicron was first identified as a new variant in November after a surge of cases in South Africa. Its emergence led to swift travel restrictions all over the globe. Now here's why experts are specifically concerned about this. Omicron seems to carry a large number of mutations on its spike protein. That's what the virus uses to grab onto cells it infects. One is called E484A, and it can make the virus less recognizable to some antibodies which defend us against infection. It could also impact how an infected person responds to monoclonal antibody treatments. The variant also carries a mutation known as N501Y, which could make the virus more likely to spread when people breathe, sneeze, or cough. Researchers and vaccine makers are still unsure whether these mutations could also impact vaccine efficacy, if the variant would be more transmissible, or if it would cause more severe illness. The Delta variant, that was first identified in India in October 2020. It now accounts for 99.9% of the cases in the United States, according to the CDC, and it's the dominant variant in much of the rest of the world. Like Omicron, Delta also carries a mutation on its spike protein, and it has been shown to evade the immune system to some extent. That means that even if you've been infected before with an older variant, it's possible you could still become infected with the Delta variant. The Alpha variant, which was first identified in September 2020, was of big concern to officials this spring. England, you may remember, was hit hard by Alpha, and it quickly spread around the world. It has been shown to be about 50% more transmissible than older variants, and it also carried lots of mutations, 23 of them. But in September 2021, it was actually demoted from a variant of concern to a variant being monitored by the CDC because of its low impact on the United States. The Beta variant was first seen in South Africa as early as May 2020. It has the E484K mutation, which can make the virus less recognizable to some antibodies, and the N501Y mutation, which is believed to make the variant more contagious. Blood tests have shown the Beta variant can infect people who have had COVID before, as well as people who've been vaccinated. But that variant never really gained much of a foothold in the United States either. And like Alpha, it has now been designated as a variant being monitored by the CDC. There's a lot we're still learning about this virus and its variants. But here's what we do know can help curb the spread. Masks, hand washing, physical distancing, good ventilation. They all still work. And while some of these variants have been shown to evade vaccines to some extent, research shows even with a breakthrough infection, vaccinated people aren't as likely to get as sick with COVID-19. So if you haven't been vaccinated, get vaccinated now. And the CDC says all adults should also get a booster shot 6 months after the second dose of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine, or 2 months after a single dose of the Johnson & Johnson.
With that, I'm slipping into a quick break on the show. Up next, we are telling you how different countries around the world are reacting to Omicron. Which countries have put in a travel ban, where masks have become mandatory once again. All of that is coming up in just a bit. Do stay with us. With the Omicron variant spreading across the world, 30 countries and counting for the moment, around 70 countries have imposed restrictions on travellers from South Africa. The country says they are being punished for doing the right thing.
A coronavirus testing centre in Johannesburg. The Omicron variant is already dominant here, just weeks after it was first detected. A doctor who's treating Omicron patients is expressing cautious optimism.
But the majority of what we are presenting to primary healthcare practitioners are extremely mild cases, so mild to moderate.
The White House says there aren't enough cases yet to evaluate the variant's danger, but that they are prepared.
Our variant surveillance system has demonstrated we can reliably detect new variants, from Alpha in the start of 2021 to Delta over this past summer.
The CDC is strengthening its booster recommendations for Americans, saying all adults should get another dose 6 months after their second Pfizer or Moderna shot, or after just 2 months if they had the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. It's a similar story abroad, where the UK government says it will now make boosters available to everyone over 18.
The target that we've set ourselves is to offer a booster to everyone eligible by the end of January.
In England on Tuesday, face masks became mandatory again in stores and on public transportation. Israel confirmed its first cases of Omicron community spread. The Sheba Medical Center said a doctor who traveled abroad and then infected a colleague. In the Netherlands, where some are already isolating in this airport hotel, the government said the Omicron variant was in the country a full week earlier than it originally thought, found in test samples from November 19th that were just sequenced. Japan found its first Omicron variant case, a man who traveled from Namibia. Its borders closed to all foreigners on Tuesday. South African leaders are slamming those global travel bans as ineffective and punitive.
We feel that the travel ban is very unfair. South African science should be commended for discovering this new variant and sharing the information with the world. We have played our role very responsible.
The Omicron variant and its fallout, that is something we are tracking very closely here on Debrief. We'll continue with the focus tomorrow as well. For the moment, thanks for watching. Good night.